Well, this is kind of hilarious. I was literally almost done writing the script for this video when Neil Bonaparte posted that he had won offline Gencon with Blueflare. Blueflare is always an interesting deck to look at. It's a deck that in some people's minds easily counterable, or in other cases, underperforming. But with so much testing and a diverse meta, Blueflare may be the deck that you use to outplay the competition. For this deck profile, I'll be going over my current profile, along with analyzing Neil's variant. Wanyamon is the supreme egg of this deck. You run so many blue Tamers that you have a high chance to turn one Evo into a level 3, and then slam down one of your blazing memory boosts. But if your local is playing Royal Knights, you honestly could run more Upamons for the fact that you guarantee card draw as they slam cards in the form of their Knights. Level 3 wise, you've got Gaussmon. One that lets you play any level 4 Digimon with Blueflare and its traits on deletion, and one that on play once per turn lets you draw a card when a Blueflare Digimon is played, including itself. Dracomon is another option, but the passive effect doesn't work when it's played. However, the inheritable is kind of nice. I can honestly see you using either. Your level 4s are pretty standard, but for this variant I opt not to use the EX4 Greymon simply because the restand effect can be so important. My variant maxes out on the EX4 male Birdramon for the jamming factor, because there are so many big Digimon in security this format, especially in the Royal Knights matchup. The BT10 male Birdramon is equally important for the stun, and of course Decadramon for the draw. Outside of Blueflare though, this variant of the build does continue running Starter Deck 1 Greymon for the extra security check. But outside this, if you prioritize card draw, bring back those Greymons. And if you want more stunning capability, bring back the old male Birdramon. Personally though, jamming is the MVP. Especially if your opponent DP reduces you, you can still check as long as you're alive. Level 5 wise, it's metalgreymons galore. First you have 4 copies of BT10 to rush and stun up to 3 Digimon with sources equal to or less than this Digimon when you Digi-Cross. 3 of the metalgreymon plus Cyber Launcher for a quick Digivolve up and an armor purge if you really need it. Sure, your opponent can block, but then you might have a chance to restand. And finally 2 EX4 metalgreymons for the source strip of 2 sources of your choice under one of your opponent's Digimon. Funny enough, this metalgreymon explicitly requires you to have a blue Greymon, so if you're planning on using red Greymon, that's illegal. Decagreymon is an option, but unfortunately it's not considered metalgreymon in name like metalgreymon Cyber Launcher. Quick ruling clarification: if your BT10 metalgreymon were to target Belphemon Sleep Mode, while it won't be currently affected, once it goes into Rage Mode, it will be. Now you might be wondering why my level 5 has to be named metalgreymon, the purpose of which is for your level 6 zieggreymon. Zieggreymon costs 3 from a blue or red level 5 Digimon, but has a cost of 2 from any Digimon called metalgreymon. Not metalgreymon in name, just metalgreymon. That cost could be huge, considering you could gain back 2 memory if your opponent has 2 or more Digimon in play. And while you're thinking Grey Knightsmon, I just don't like this card. Its cost is too high for what you want comparatively to other decks. For level 7s, I know a lot of people will be running Death Xmon. Personally for me, I don't. But for your option cards, you run a slew of them. 1 Congo for decks that go for the rush element. This could prevent Marcus from being ineffective. Not to mention in some security control matchups, this might help as well. 4 Blazing Memory Boost is mandatory, considering this can add so many cards to hand, play your Tamers, and delay for future memory. Ice Wall for the surprise and Blanket Grace turn in a way. And the second best option card for Blueflare, Sourai. Sourai is the best counter mechanic to some decks. Royal Knight will not be able to attack unless you're a Digimon like Alphamon, which can tuck a Royal Knight underneath it to give it a source. Remember, Sourai's attack prevention is not at activation, but rather a blanket effect that affects all Digimon through your opponent's turn. Which means, if your opponent has Sleep Mode and end of turn trashes itself for Rage Mode, that Rage Mode cannot attack during your turn if it does not have any other Digivolution sources. For my last option card, I simply go with 2 Hammer Sparks for more memory gain and surprise and security. And finally, Tamers in the form of Kiriha Aonuma, and the dual Tamer from EX4, Kiriha Aonuma and Nene Amano. Both Tamers are valid targets off Blue Memory Boost, and it is imperative that you get this Tamer out as quickly as possible when you play this deck. Fixing memory and crossing at least one Digimon from trash can be beneficial. For my matchups and playtesting, I played against Jesmon, Greymon, Beelzemon, Greymon, and Hunters. Jesmon and Beelzemon matchups felt really good, considering my particular variants place multiple bodies on board at times. Greymon and Hunter matchups were 50-50, with Greymon typically being the worst matchup, because my particular variant is designed for a single stack raise in game. Still, Blueflare has many strengths in that your metalgreymon Cyber Launcher is an MVP for its armor purge ability, potentially getting around destructive option cards. However, against DP reduction, this is where the 50-50 matchup against Greymon was typical. Weakness-wise, this deck is easily countered if your opponent does not play multiple bodies on board, hence why Greymon was the worst matchup in testing. Reviewing over Neil's variant, I completely understand why maxing out Sorai would be a thing. Against Royal Knights and Belphemon, it's a little way to stop your opponent from doing anything. Hilariously, Royal Knight using Alphamon only affects your top end zieggreymon, but against anything else, it's also understandable. For Security +1 Greymons, I also understand because his variant looks less defense, more aggro. No Hammer Sparks because those slots went to Death Xmon instead. The problem is Death Xmon predominantly affects your Hunter matchup, at least in my opinion. Otherwise, a lot of decks out there don't typically have too many cards on board. In general, Blueflare is the deck that I think will continue seeing play and topping. Some variants may utilize Kazuamon, while others may look at cheeky plays from sources of Cross 7 Superior mode with Kaiser Nail. But I've thoroughly enjoyed what EX4 has brought to the deck. And though BT13 does not introduce any new techs or tricks to it, sometimes an old deck will do just the trick. What are your thoughts, and what changes would you make? Let me know, and I'll see you next time. This is Digi-Panda, logging out.